Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and having a fantastic week. In today's video, I'm really excited to be joined by a very special guest, which is Lara Joseph of the Animal Behaviour Centre. And we're going to talk all things about parrot training, parrot enrichment, and contra freeloading as well. So if you haven't heard that phrase before, we're going to dive into it and why it is important in terms of looking after our birds. So before we kind of dive into chatting all things parrot, Lara, would you mind introducing yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name's Lara Joseph. I own the Animal Behavior Center. I started the Animal Behavior Center 11 and a half years ago. It was a dream of mine forever. We were going to call it the Avian Behavior Center because we specialize a lot in parrots. But if for anybody that is not familiar with the work that we do, we work with every species, well, a lot of different species. Um, so that's why I didn't call it the Avian Behavior Center, because I wanted people to know this works on every living thing, no matter what the species. So since then, we are in the process of acquiring 2 timber wolves, 3 American alligators, and 3 ring-tailed lemurs, just so we can show people how this applies across species. We focus on applied behavior analysis and its use with exotics, because there's a lot of people who are already doing great work with dogs. So I'm leaving the domestic area up to them, and I back up my work with exotics, showing, can you force this bird or this wolf to do something? Yes, maybe once before behavior issues start. So I just like to show people how you don't have to use force to interact with an animal. And that's using applied behavior analysis, using B.F. Skinner's laws of behavior. Is that good?
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Again, same principles as what we use. We are all about, putting the animal first and trying to meet their needs as much as possible. And the thing that I love about your website is the first thing you see is when we know better, we do better. And I absolutely love that quote. And I think it really resonates with me. I've been working with birds for 15 years now, and things that I did 15 years ago have completely changed. Even things I did a year ago have
Yep.
completely changed because we're always hopefully striving to do better. And one of the ways that we can do that is through enrichment. There are some people out there who feel that enrichment isn't a necessity. It's more of like a chore, like, oh, if I've got time, I'll put something in. But actually, it's a lot more important than that, isn't it?
It's extremely important. Enrichment is what I was specializing in and focusing on before I got into training. Um, I always say training or enrichment is not an option, it is a must. And hopefully we all learned that during COVID. When we were all trapped in our houses, you see how hard it was for a lot of people to try to cope with that. That is the lives of our parrots. Um, I know I keep all of my birds and parrots in enclosures at night, and I do for safety reasons. There's a lot of times we do shift them and move them around every single day, giving them out of cage time, flight time, play gym, training time. But what are they going to do when we're not training them, when they're not out flying around? Enrichment is a must. It's so important. I can't put enough emphasis on that. We're open 7 day, well, not open to the public. We do our work through our live streams, but we are here 7 days a week, and we have an enrichment team in our enrichment room every single day. Um, Coming up with different enrichment and new enrichment for the birds and the other animals in our care, but it's primarily the birds, because the parrots, I tell people, the more intelligent the animal, the harder it is to keep. If that animal is not interacting and learning from its enrichment, it is probably practicing some future undesired behavior that's getting ready to happen. And I know I like to focus some of my work on abnormal repetitive behaviors. such as what you see with parrots. An abnormal repetitive behavior could be rhythmic screaming, repetitive, same frequency screaming. Could be the cage bar flipping where they turn in their cages. Could be scaling up and down on their cage bars. Can lead to overpreening, which can lead to plucking, mutilation issues. So there's in our enclosures, there's always, I wish I could flip my camera around and show you. There's always some form of new enrichment going in during the day. And enrichment comes in so many different formats. That's why I got into training, because I found that studies show that if you're actually using positive reinforcement training, it's the animal's preferred form of enrichment. I have found that extremely true, which is why I got into training, because I saw how much the parrots enjoyed it. And if they're not enjoying it, you may want to take a step back and think of what a better way to approach, because usually when the parrots here see that I'm getting ready to train, everybody goes to their stations and they just wait.
Definitely. I know some of my guys almost like ask for training sessions, like, I'm ready, let's go, I want to do some things, which is really funny to see. And it's really, it's one of the things that I love most as well about working with birds, is seeing them engage in training, seeing them learn, seeing almost like the cogs turning in their brain, like trying to work things out. It's really fascinating. Leading back to enrichment, I saw on one of your Coffee with the Critters live streams that you did with your birds, that you said that you give all of your birds and possibly all of the other animals at least 3 different forms of enrichment every day. Is that correct? And what are the ways that you kind of try and do that?
Okay. We have a form that hangs on the wall. It has every single parrot's name, all of our animals' names. And we have a section. It's AM feeds, PM feeds, waters, enrichment, and behavior concerns. So every day we have to fill in for each animal. We have 22 animals. What form of enrichment we put in there daily. So, and I will be talking about this at an upcoming presentation I'm giving in 2 months. Enrichment can come in so many different forms. We don't have enough time to say what all they are. But as you and I were talking before this recording got started, that's what all the beeping and the backup, we're building a huge aviary out there. So I'm a big fan of aviaries because I've built so many and I have seen what effect it has on behavior. So we may, as far as enrichment, we have a lot of foraging. We have every single one of our animals foraging for their food. And for those that may not know what it is, it's searching for their food, working for their food. So we have foraging toys that are going in. We may move perches. When I'm in a crunch and well, not anymore. What I used to do when I had birds in my house is I would just, if I didn't have time to make them enrichment that day, I would just turn their cage. So, I mean, you turn a whole cage 45 degrees or 180 degrees. Now they've got a whole different view. Their food dish, their water dish it's in the same spot, but they have a different view from that spot. That's something quick and easy. What we do now, because our cages are so large, we can't move them. What we do is we have play gyms that we build. A couple of the birds come out on play gyms. Sometimes they switch play gyms. The birds that can't be out because they may fly and attack somebody here. Let me know if that gets loud.
It's fine, I can't hear it at all.
You can't?
No.
Oh, what a blessing. What we do here is if a couple of birds can come out, it opens up 2 cages are empty. So we take every bird here and move it 1 cage to the left or to different cages. So training as a form of enrichment. I'm training every animal at least once a day. Sometimes I'm training, and training doesn't have to be a long period of time. Sometimes I'm training and it's for 15 seconds, done. And then I come back in 20 minutes, 15 seconds again, done. It's something that the animal always looks forward to if you're using positive reinforcement and applied behavior analysis. Flight, we do recall training as a form of enrichment. We'll do all kinds of things. So training is one form of enrichment. Perch placement, we do showers. Once the aviaries are built, the birds can get outside, the birds can come back inside, in addition to their foraging toys. Every single toy we have in their cage is some form of foraging toy.
Amazing. Foraging is so important. I actually did a video last week on how to teach your bird to forage. So if you haven't seen that, make sure that you watch that after this video. But it is an essential skill. You know, we don't want to necessarily just give our birds just free access with no work going on, which we'll talk about in a moment. But foraging is essential, and it's important, I think, to think about the actual cage setup, changing it regularly, like you mentioned, but also really considering whether our birds know how to interact with these toys, whether they're actually getting used, because it's all well and good, you know, furnishing cages, enclosures, habitats, aviaries, whatever it is that your bird lives in with amazing toys. But if they aren't using it, it's not enrichment, is it? It's just there.
Right, it's an obstacle
Mhm.
in their way. Something else, if I can say something else, when I'm looking at enrichment, I'm incorporating the 3 C's that's choice, control, and complexities. You touched on something that I find extremely important. If your foraging toy or enrichment is too complex and the bird can't figure it out, I mean, that's a huge red flag. Take it out immediately, modify it, because otherwise, if the bird sits there and tries to figure it out and it can't figure it out, you're likely positively punishing their future rate of behavior of interacting with that toy or any other toy. So you want to shape complexity, meaning reinforcing small approximations towards the target behavior, which foraging provides intermittent schedules of reinforcement. The bird gets a positive reinforcer once in a while, once every 15 seconds, variable rate. But you want them to be able to attain that reinforcer in a timely manner. And by timely, that time can lengthen once the bird understands, oh, I got to work a little harder now. That's the complexity that comes in, because studies also show that with predictability comes boredom. So we don't want the same old toys. We hang things from spinners that if the bird goes to touch it, it just spun out of your way. So you'll see the bird fly to the other area or crawl across the cage to get to the other area. And it creates complexity because now the bird's standing in front of it again. If it goes to reach for it with 1 foot, it knows it's likely to start spinning out of its way. So the form of complexity comes in with the bird keeping its balance, grasping with 1 foot, destroying with its mouth, its beak. Yeah, we have all kinds of different levels of complexity. And this is probably going to go into where we're going next. So maybe I should
No, no,
stop
please feel
there.
free. Feel free.
When I sit down in a plane, it is really hard for me to sit still. If I am not keeping my body occupied, I have to keep my mind occupied. And whether that's playing games on my phone, which I do a lot, it's a stress reliever for me. But I have to keep myself mentally stimulated. So that's exactly what we need to be providing to our parrots. Keep them learning, keep them mentally stimulated. We can do that through the foraging toys, creating puzzles for them to figure out. And like I'm stuck on this one game on my phone that I've been trying to beat this level for a week now and I can't beat it. But I keep going back to it because that challenge is a reinforcer of mine. And once I finally beat that level, before I reach out to my sister and ask her to do it for me, that's gonna be such a, I know I'm gonna be like, thank God, finally. But it's a form of enrichment for me, and enrichment is individualized. We have different birds here from different backgrounds, different ages. We have some that we suspect come from a history of little, if any, adequate enrichment. And I can tell by the abnormal repetitive behaviors which ones are most well practiced. And I can tell by, you have a big bird that won't destroy a small piece of wood. You know what I mean? So you can kind of get an idea, because most every animal we have, we've acquired from somewhere else. It was either going to be moved, euthanized, or lost its home for some reason. And we have taken in several of all of our animals except for one. And we turn them into ambassadors to teach the world, hey, look at this guy. Came here 20 years ago, was going to be euthanized. Look how the behavior has changed. Look what he's doing now.
Awesome. And I love that. I think that's awesome. And speaking of change, I think that's some of the things that many people don't consider when we have parrots in our homes or even in facilities. We need to build resilient birds who can adapt to change, because we see many neophobic birds. We see many birds who can't even cope with a different color toy because it's different. They haven't seen it before. And that kind of leads into keeping the same toys in there that don't get destroyed. When something new comes in, they're like, wow, what is this? I've never seen it before. I don't know how to interact with it. And it's terrifying. And maybe we keep the same routines all the time, and we don't challenge them enough because they are so complex and they can struggle in a captive environment if we aren't trying as best as we can to meet their needs and make them really adaptable.
Yeah, you touched on two key words that are extremely important in the work we do, and that is change and routine. We try not to develop, we have schedules. We try not to fall into routines, because what I've seen with those routines is when they get broken, then you have a stressed bird. So a lot of times you'll hear me say, keep your animal used to change, and you can keep them used to change through enrichment and training, because the world changes. I had to leave 2 years ago for a surgery that took me out for a couple of months. That could have been extremely stressful to my birds if they weren't used to change. And yeah, we're constantly trying to think every day, like, okay, what can I do to change this bird's environment, but still be within its comfort level? There may be a long-term goal that this is what I want this bird doing, but if I shoot for that moon right now, I'm going to push this animal way past its comfort level. So we have to take all these steps towards that end goal. And, we'll have a new person feeding birds. That could be a stressor if the bird isn't used to change. But when we do have a new person coming in, because there's a lot of different people here feeding birds, and we need these animals comfortable with every and I'm not going to live forever. Like Rico, he's my youngest parrot, and I've had him since he was 5 months old, and he just turned 20. So what happens to Rico if something happens to me? Yes, Rico and I are super bonded. He's very bonded to me. I'm very bonded to him for numerous different reasons. But that bond, when we're separated, could be very stressful for the person coming in the next morning if all Rico does is scream when I'm not in his sight. So if you imagine this being in somebody's household, that's extremely stressful, not only to the bird, but every single family member. And a lot of times you'll see people just step back away from the bird and they don't longer want to care for it. And then the bird is in serious threat of losing its home.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And we call that the cycle of unmet needs. You know, the parrot is difficult to live with. You can't meet their needs. They express these undesirable behaviors. We can't deal with it, so we check out. So they do more of it, and it just goes round and round and round until something gives. Either we change and we look for answers, we look for guidance and help, or the animal ends up moving somewhere else. You know, some of our parrots have had 3 homes, 4 homes, and it shows. And we try our very best, but it can take time to work through some of these undesirable behaviors. But enrichment can be a really key component in behavior modification. And leading on from that, when you build those skills, you really understand the concept of contra freeloading, which is what I wanted to talk about next. It's something that I find fascinating, you know, watching animals do it. But for anyone who doesn't know what it means, because you may not have heard contra freeloading before, Lara, would you mind explaining the phenomenon?
Sure. I'm a big fan of contra freeloading. And contra freeloading is when, and I have a whole slideshow of this, is when the animal, in this instance, we're talking about parrots, can see free food. And what free food means is no work to get that food. The most work you have to do is bend over and pick it up. When they pass up the opportunity for the exact same free food and choose to work for it instead and leave the free food sit there. I know at one time, if you used to Google contra freeloading, my video would come up of our mini pig contra freeloading for his food. So that is a pig who eats anything, um, choosing to bypass the exact same food item that he could obtain at less effort because it's sitting on the floor, or choosing to turn to this in foraging toy. And I think he had a pull on a chain, a bell would ring, a lever would drop, and Cheerios would come out. And he clearly chose to work for it versus getting the exact same thing with less effort.
Yeah, and it's a natural behavior. You know, we talk about foraging a lot, and it's because that's what they do a lot in the wild. They don't just get a bowl of food given to them, they have to work for it. And yes, the wild is not this Disney-esque, you know, amazing place where everything's wonderful. It is a harsh environment, but they are hardwired and pre-built to express these natural behaviors. And when a bird is busy foraging and looking for food and engaging, they're going to have less energy, less time, less motivation to do something undesirable, like you're screaming, you're biting, hormonal behavior, whatever other behavior labels we want to use for that. It's really essential that we start building up those skills from the bottom. And a lot of people think that getting birds to work for their food is mean. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I think you're doing a big injustice to your animal, your bird thriving by not having it work for its food. So I understand that concept. I mean, I understand because I may have thought that at one time before I knew better. And I knew better by educating myself and seeing it being implemented right in front of me with all these 22 students that I have, these animals, and I am their student. I am learning right along with them. They are my best teachers, but we could feed them their daily requirements, which they can eat out of a bowl within less than 5 minutes. Then what are they going to do? You know what I mean? You've got all this time to try to figure out what they're going to do. Because if you don't guide them in the direction that you want them to go, which the end result is thriving, then they're going to practice some type of behavior, whether you like it or not. And it's probably going to be something you don't want.
Definitely. So enrichment, contra freeloading, getting our birds working, getting birds thinking, exercising, all those kinds of things is so important when it comes to providing their diets, but also the diet itself. We're not going to dive too much into the diet because I've got endless videos with Jason on my channel, but I know, Lara, you have the same kind of philosophy with kind of raw whole food nutrition with your birds as well. So I just wanted your kind of thoughts on what you provide for your birds and what your thoughts are on the best way to feed them.
Yeah. So I follow Dr. Jason Crean for his nutritional advice and Dr. Karen Becker as well. Um, Jason is definitely the go-to in the avian community. And I don't pretend to know a lot about nutrition. I know I focus on my birds' nutrition more than I need to focus on my own. Um, but we feed all raw whole food primarily. We haven't fed pellets in I can't tell you how long.
Mhm.
We've taken processed food out of their diet, and because in I've learned this through Jason for my parrots. I have since taken all processed food, all dog food out of my wolf diet, as much as possible. The lemurs we no longer feed them lemur biscuits. The alligators, no alligator biscuits. It's raw bones, meat, muscle for the wolves and for the gators. For the lemurs, it's fresh fruits and vegetables. For my parrots, it is fresh fruits, vegetables, sprouts, flowers. The pellet we do use are cold pressed pellets, so there's no heating. Staring at my kookaburra, she gets raw meat that we cut up for the gators and for the wolves, and in addition to the mice, because a lot of I don't know, there might be some people on here with birds because we've got meat eating birds too. The black cast hornbills, they get to the calcium through the nutrition of the adult mouse bones. And so it's important not to always feed them pinkies all the time because those pinkies don't have all the nutrients in it. We use those as treats. So yeah, to the best of my ability, all of my parrots are on a raw whole food diet because of following Jason.
Yeah, fantastic. And we see the results. We see a reduction in undesirable behavior when they are having bioavailable foods, they're having real foods, they're having less of those synthetics in their diet. So it is really important. And then, having healthy foods and having your birds work for them, you're really meeting a lot of their needs. And it's really fantastic to watch. But sometimes we hear from people who say, well, I've provided enrichment for my bird. I really want it to work for it, but it's being really lazy. It can't be bothered to work for it. It's stubborn. It doesn't. And we really try and stay away from these behavior labels because we really set ourselves and our birds up to fail because we are making huge assumptions on their thoughts. We are not parrots. We cannot know what they are thinking. But when we see birds who are being lazy and stubborn, I don't know how you feel about this, Laura, but we see birds who are lacking in skills and lacking understanding their environment. So how would you approach a bird who is lazy or stubborn, who is not engaging in enrichment?
Well, if I had a bird in my care, which that's the way they usually come to me, is not interacting with enrichment, it's likely a couple different things. We've trained them to be that way. They have taught us that we will bend over and pick up everything and give it to them so they don't have to work for it. It could be the caregiver's lack of understanding, of knowing, I didn't know these birds were capable of this. Um, so it could be that people don't care. And I would say if people don't care, they're probably not on my broadcast or your broadcast.
Quite possible,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So that's a whole different avenue. But if you have a bird using the labels lazy and stubborn, when we break those down and put them into observable, measurable events, then you can drop those labels and have those labels stop restricting what you think your bird can and can't do. So if I have a bird that isn't interacting with enrichment, what I am doing is focusing on what is it doing? What does it already know how to do? What is it learning in its environment? I will sit and observe the bird and then say, okay, it went and took a drink of water, so it can drink. It went and ate, so it knows how to eat. Now we start bringing in levels of complexity and making it so simple for the bird to be able to get whatever we want it to do. And then you start increasing complexity. And that's through shaping. And see if your bird, just like the other day, Rico, which he's sitting there foraging as we speak, he was in the back of his enclosure, and like I said, he is so bonded to me that if he saw me walk up to his enclosure, he would abandon whatever he's doing and come over closer to me. But he was going to town on this one toy, and I wanted to get closer to find the reinforcer behind the behavior so I could add more of it or make it more complex for him to get to it. Because Rico is my master forager. I've had him since he was 5 months old. We've come down this path together. So he was my tester. I would just be like, well, I'm going to make this. Let's see what you do with that. And he would let me know something's too simple. What I don't want to do, what will positively punish my behavior of making a foraging toy is spending 3 hours on making it and watching the bird destroy it in less than 5 minutes. So that means I've got to get creative and make these different toys that last longer, offer intermittent schedules of reinforcement, and a variety of different substrates, different locations, what's sitting next to their roosting perch, what they get when they come out of their enclosure. We have different toys or pieces of enrichment that they're only allowed to have under supervision. And then the ones that they don't need to have supervision are all in their enclosures. Like we've got this whole guidelines for safety issues for parrot enrichment that we have hanging in our enrichment room, something like if using metal chain, nothing over 12 inches, cover with PVC so their toes can't get caught in it, because I did have to get my green wing out because it was caught. This was a long time ago. If we use poly rope, hollow poly rope, one of my things, one of my safety guidelines is it can only be so long, because even if we're tying knots and slipping beads on and tying knots again, if that's all that is, that bird is going to untie that knot, drop that bead, untie that knot, and then so your piece of poly rope that was once this big when it was finished being made is now untangled, hanging in their enclosure this long, along with 10 other pieces that have been destroyed. And that can be a way for the bird to get in and have it caught around its neck. Obviously, no enrichment is 100% safe. I get people asking me a lot of times, aren't you afraid of this? Aren't you afraid of this? And I'm like, well, I do take precautions. Anybody that knows me knows that my animals are the sole purpose for why I'm on this earth. But what is the alternative? No enrichment, a barren cage? That is cruel.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And safety is a big thing that I think of as well. It's you have to kind of really evaluate any toy you buy or any toy you make and think, how could my bird injure itself on there? And when you think about that, you can try and make it as safe as possible. As Lara said, no enrichment is 100% safe. It's impossible. You know, we get paper cuts and you think of paper as, you know, safe. So really think about what you're putting into your bird's cage, where you're putting it, how they're interacting with it, if they are not, and how you can encourage them to do that. Because applying behavior labels like mean and stubborn and lazy, it doesn't help our birds, and it doesn't help our birds in training as well, or when we're trying to work through undesirable behaviors. Again, with our consultations, we see people say, my bird's aggressive, my bird's hormonal, my bird's this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, what does that actually look like? What does that mean? And that's where applied behavior analysis really comes in, to work out what is actually going on with this behavior, because it isn't just as simple as thinking what you think. We have to take a scientific approach of what we're seeing and what the reinforcement is. So I wondered if you could speak a bit more about what you do and the idea and concept of applied behavior analysis.
Sure. Before we go into that, can I just say one more thing about enrichment?
Please do.
I was thinking about it. If 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 you're worried if there is your bird's gonna choke on this, get its toe caught, there's some kind of hazard, maybe put it on the play stand, the play gym, the Java tree, while you're working around the house, so you can keep an eye on the bird. Is it actually ingesting this? If so, take it away immediately. Um, if it's not what you want them to be ingesting. And then once you feel more comfortable with that new substrate, that new item, then put it in their cage.
Yeah.
Or sometimes there's certain toys here that never go in cages. They're just on play gyms, because a bird is only on a play gym when somebody's around the center.
Mhm.
Sorry, I just wanted,
No, I
because
completely agree. Yeah.
I know a lot of people get really nervous, and it's just because they care,
Mhm.
you know, about the safety of certain enrichment with their birds. So there are different precautions you can take.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Sophie, what was your question?
And I'll also echo that we have some toys that we only have outside of the cage as well, like some novelty toys, learning toys, that kind of thing that we wouldn't put in there. You know, with our conures, for example, they would just shred plastic if we put it in there. So we would never put that in the cage. But if we have it outside, if we're, teaching them chain behaviors or, learning behaviors and things like that, then that's great fun. And we do that through things like applied behavior analysis, positive reinforcement training, force free training, and that kind of thing. So I would love to hear your experience and your thoughts and your tips and tricks and stuff for using applied behavior analysis and positive reinforcement training with parrots in our homes.
Okay. I think using applied behavior analysis, which if you don't mind, and I'll call it ABA from here on out, and positive reinforcement is the best form of communication I have found with any animal, especially the parrots. You don't want to be forcing them. You don't want to be consistently pushing them past their comfort level. And that's why you and I are here, because of forcing a parrot to do something. You're going to get, it's going to affect your relationship. What are you pairing yourself with? You're going to get a bird that is constantly trying to get away from you versus wanting to come towards you. You're going to get bit. You're going to get lunged at. And for people who, I go into these social media groups when I'm tagged. I will go in and look. And I just, one of the things that, there's so much advice out there that worries me, but one of the things I see a lot, and I'm in this for not just the parrot, but I want to help that person. If I see you trying, I am going to jump in and help you. Because I know you love the bird. But one of the things I see in these forums is people saying it's a bird, you're just going to have to get used to getting bit. That's like saying it's a human, just get used to getting bit. That would probably shock a lot of us.
Mhm.
But if you have to resort to that, that is a form of communication with your parrot that should be telling you your parrot is not comfortable with what you're doing. And it's probably what we're doing that is reinforcing that bite, that scream, that lunge, that flight away. This is the best form of communication I have found with any animal. And I train a lot of different animals, and I train a lot of animals that could easily be labeled as dangerous. And I do that on purpose to show people how well this works as a two-way street form of communication from me to that animal and that animal to me. If I'm not sure what I'm seeing, I'll stop. I stop because I'm like, this is going to go one of two ways here. I'm going to eventually find out that this is a behavior that I didn't mean to reinforce. And what I don't want to do is have to counter condition, meaning retrain. So I don't even want the animal, the parrot, to learn that in the first place. Because once we understand 2 + 2 = 4, you can't change that.
Mhm.
We know it equals 4.
Mhm.
So I don't want the parrot to learn an undesired behavior. And by undesired, it's undesired by me, and any behavior that's usually undesired by me is because it's going to have a negative impact on this animal's welfare at some point. So I don't want to have to retrain. If I don't know what nervousness looks like from a parrot, I'm gonna stop what I was doing and go to something that the parrot already knows how to do, or something we just started training, because that's how I better understand that parrot's body language. Body language is behavior. Flat feathers pulled in, wide eyes, oval eyes, beak slightly open, beak shut, feathers raising on the back of the neck, wings coming out, wings going in, tail flaring, eyes pinning. Where are the feathers coming out? Are they coming out from here? Are they coming out from here? You know, um, and how do I know what comfortable looks like from that parrot? Is I'll train it and I'll see what it looks like. Once it knows a positive reinforcer is coming, I am looking at the shape of the eyes, the feather placement. Is the beak open in anticipation of receiving a positive reinforcer, or is it open because it's getting ready to defend itself? I need to know which one that is, because if I'm not sure that bird is opening its mouth to defend itself, I'm going to abort. I'm going to stop what I'm doing and see what the bird already knows how to do and ask more of that, so I can see what anticipation looks like, so I can see what excitement looks like. And I have found myself in that situation before where I trained a behavior and I was like, and then I realized after I got to know the bird or the animal, oh, that's not what I thought it was. That's nervousness, you know? And here we got a huge concrete truck getting ready to drive by the center. So, but I'll tell you this, I would interact with the animals in my care in no other way. And the happiest I ever am is when I'm training an animal, because I know by using positive reinforcement and applied behavior analysis, that animal, if it's not thriving yet, it's getting ready to, once it learns what all this means. And there is nothing else I want more than to see animals in our care thriving and people learning from that.
Yeah, me too. I completely agree. And, training isn't a linear process. Sometimes we have setbacks. That's completely fine. Go back to the last point, you were successful. Training isn't quick for every animal. Some birds take a really long time to learn even the most simplest of behaviors that we would consider to be easy behaviors. Some birds can take a really long time with that, and that's completely fine. But if we have kind of predisposed expectations of how long things should take, that doesn't help us either. But what's also really important is if you are experiencing any of these undesirable behaviors, like you're screaming, you're biting, hormonal behavior, aggression, whatever kind of labels or what you think you're seeing is, there's always a reason behind it. Birds don't, or animals in general, they don't do things for no reason. There is always going to be a reason for behavior, which is, fueled by the consequence. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I have never seen one, and I love to say that in a presentation, is I'll look at the audience and I say, tell me one behavior you have seen your animal or your parrot do for no reason.
Mhm.
And people will raise their hand, and I'm not trying to shame them, but I just dig deeper, dig deeper. When did this start? What happens as a result? Is it a coping mechanism? Um, is it because it obviously exists because it's earning some type of reinforcement, and that reinforcer may not have value to us, but that bird is doing it for a particular reason. It is serving some type of purpose for that bird.
Yeah,
And it's
definitely.
important for us to figure out what it is,
Mhm.
because it could be something that's stressing the bird, which will eventually lead to, which could eventually lead to overpreening, a shift in behavior, plucking, which often turns to mutilation. Once you get into mutilation, now you've got not only do you have a medical condition, now you have a behavior that's been well practiced that may have been turned into abnormal repetitive behavior that you now need to counter condition, and meaning change. And if it's intense enough, that behavior may be on a consistent management plan, which means you won't ever be able to walk away and say that behavior will never exist again. You watch for those distant antecedents that it's starting to rear its ugly head again. We have one of those parrots on the other side of this wall. Some of these issues will never go away because of the history of reinforcement, the period of time the bird had to practice it. So that period of time, even though it's undesired by us, the bird has learned it earns reinforcement from it. We may not want it to do that, but it serves some type of purpose. And if your reinforcer given for training another behavior to replace that behavior, if that reinforcer isn't high enough, the bird already knows it can resort to this because it has learned that earns reinforcement too. So, I mean, some of the animals here we've constantly got our eye on, and when a behavior is given from the animal, from the bird, we're like, is that where we want this going? And it's not, Sophie, and because we're both in this isn't this form of micromanagement. It is. So many people think the word control is a bad word. It depends on how you use it. You know, um, I don't have children, but if I did, I do have to have control over those children because they're 6 and I'm 53. Hopefully I'm not having children at this age, but they haven't lived enough life to know what's safe. So I am there to guide them and show them.
Mhm. Yeah,
Same
definitely.
thing for our animals.
Absolutely. So always remember that behaviors have a reason and try and work out what that is through observation. It's really important. We often recommend people, we do it ourselves, to film your interactions, film your training sessions, watch them back, because something that you thought in the moment might have looked like something, but actually when you watch it back, it's totally different. And we get really emotional in training sessions. My bird hates me, whatever it is. But when you watch it back, actually, maybe we were doing a lot of things, or there are a lot of things in the environment that were setting the bird up to fail in the first place. So I thought we could maybe finish on talking about the antecedent and the actual thing that happens before the behavior. How can we arrange the environment, the choices that we make before we do training or before we do behaviors, to actually try and reduce the likelihood of undesirable behaviors, but also increase the likelihood of behavior we want to see more of? Because actually a lot of what we do in arranging the environment or the way that we do things can actually have a huge impact on whether these behaviors appear or not.
Yeah, and that's what applied behavior analysis is using environmental events to control behavior um, for the best success of our animals. Um, so if like an environmental event is happening right now, there's a huge concrete truck right outside this window spinning, and not one bird screamed as it went by.
Mhm.
3 years ago, you would have seen birds falling off their perches trying to get away as fast as possible. But that is what we do through enrichment and training, is shape that animal getting used to change. And another thing is I know each one of these birds as an individual. I know what an alarm call sounds like. And I know what a call sounds like for attention. And that alarm call, I make sure I reinforce that 100% of the time. I want to know what is scaring you. And then once I see it, I'll start, if I know that is never going to be an issue, this bird will never be harmed by this, then I'll start shaping its acceptance and seeing that this is not a threat. So I'm constantly using environmental events to control or change behavior. This was one of our volunteers. I always make sure before people interact with a parrot, what are you going to use as a hopeful potential positive reinforcer? And I saw one person call for our roller pigeon Cello, who Jason gave to me, which has since passed away. She was calling it to her, and before I could ask her, the cello already flew to her hand. And I said, "What reinforcer are you going to use?" And she goes, "I don't know." And I said, "Make sure you know what reinforcer you're going to use before you ask a behavior. If there's nothing in it for the parrot, it can positively punish its future rate of behavior of interacting with you." And something else, I think identifying reinforcers is a lot harder than what a lot of people think. You know what I mean? Because your reinforcers can change just like that, and you better have a handful of them ready to go. But something else I want to say that I know you see in the work you do, and I know for a fact I see in the work that I do, when you first start working with an extremely fearful parrot, or a parrot labeled as aggressive, most behaviors labeled as aggressive are out of fear, out of people pushing the bird past its comfort level. When I start working with a fearful bird or a bird I've never met before, my attention is not high on the on that bird's positive reinforcer list. But once I start training and providing different forms of physical and mental enrichment, I am a conditioned reinforcer. I am pairing myself with that animal's positive reinforcers, and soon the opportunity to be near me, to be on me, to be touched by me is one of the animal's highest valued positive reinforcers. It will become that way.
Definitely. We have a video on secondary reinforcers and training those on our Patreons if you want to come and sign up and learn more about that. All the links will be down in the description. But Lara, it's been wonderful to have you on the channel and picking your brain on all things parrots. Could you share with everyone where people can find you and learn more about what you're up to at the moment?
Sure. You can always find me on my website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. You can always email me at Lara, Lara, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. I'm on the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page all the time, and that's where we have coffee with the critters. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, that's how you can find the work that I do. But I want to say, with that being said, Sophie, I was thinking, would you be a guest on Coffee with the Critters?
I would love to be a guest on Coffee with the Critters. So what I will do is I will leave all of Laura's links down in the description as well, so you can go and follow her and check out all of the amazing things that she is up to at the moment and more about all kinds of training and enrichment things. But Laura, thank you so much for coming on the channel. It's been wonderful. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found value in this. But thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everybody.